Hey guys, welcome to this week's video. As many of you know, I am a psychotherapist and coach, and I work primarily with gay men. And something that comes up in a lot of sessions, which might be surprising to you, I don't know if it is, the consistency with which quotes from RuPaul's Drag Race come up has been interesting to me. And one of the ones that comes up a lot is, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? Can I get an amen? And I think the reason for that is that there's some deep wisdom in that saying. There's a reason that she says that all the time. And there's a reason I put it on the front page of my website, because there is wisdom in that. So I thought today we could kind of start a conversation on expanding that topic and maybe looking at how do we start to get to deepen that space of love for ourselves, and how do we recognize when maybe we're looking for love in all the wrong places. So one of my favorite meditations lately has been one by Sarah Blondin called Loving and Listening to Yourself. I would highly recommend it. One of the ideas that she proposes in that meditation is that where we look for love outside of ourselves is fundamentally our work to do. And I think it's a really good practical way of digging into what are those areas for ourselves that could use some attention. And if we think about historically our relationships, if we think about currently too, we want to look at where are those places that I look for affirmation or love outside of myself that are opportunities for me to find that within. So some examples, that I see that I've experienced are like attractiveness. I mean, I think attractiveness is a pretty universal one. We want to be found attractive. When it expands to the point that our sense of worthiness and belonging is tied to how people perceive our attractiveness, then that's an area that we can work on. Another pretty common one is success and being perceived as successful, whatever that means for the individual person. It can be climbing the ladder, it can be making a certain amount of money, it can be prestige within a job. Again, these things in and of themselves are not issues. It's when we tie how we feel about ourselves, how we love ourselves, and our sense of worthiness to how other people perceive these successes and how we perceive the success outside of ourselves, that we start getting into territory where we can do some work for ourselves. So I thought, when I started thinking about this, I started thinking about, how do we know when we're doing that? How do we know when we're looking for love outside of ourselves? And I thought of three things that all begin with the letter P, so it's very easy to remember. People-pleasing, perfectionism, and perception, how other people perceive us. So if we find ourselves people-pleasing, which is, always putting other people before ourselves, always saying yes to things, valuing our time and our space and taking care of ourselves underneath what other people need for us, and doing that habitually, then we're probably in a place of looking for love outside of ourselves. Perfectionism is another one. When we are trying to manufacture in our lives perfect actions, or being perceived as doing something perfectly, when we need to do everything in our lives to a certain standard to feel worthy or to feel loved, then that again is reaching outside of ourselves for love. And that is an area in which we can look at, you know, why is that going on for us? What is the need for perfectionism? What are the messages that I'm believing about myself that support needing to do things perfectly in order to be loved? So, and lastly, perception, how people perceive us. I think, attractiveness, success, all of those are tied to how people perceive us. Of course, again, we are all concerned with how people perceive us. It affects our relationships with other people, and that's fine. It's when the perception of other people and how we're perceived is more important than how we view ourselves, or when how other people perceive us is tied to our sense of worthiness, that there's room there. That's a signal for us that we're looking for love and worthiness outside of ourselves. So, an example for me, when I was thinking about these kind of tip-offs that we're looking for love outside of ourselves, I thought back to when I was younger and how we used to go out to socialize and meet people. Actually, I know this kind of dates me, but when I was in my 20s, you had to go out to meet people face to face. I know, it's crazy. But yeah, so we like a large part of our social life was going out and spending time at gay bars. And what I kind of remembered in thinking back on that was how I felt about myself at the end of the night was tied to how much attention I got, or if I got numbers, or if I was leaving with somebody, and how that really profoundly affected how I felt about myself. So what did it look like to start to heal that for myself? I mean, for me, it's been a really long road. It's probably a road that continues. It is a road that continues for me. And it's been, for me, about developing the pieces of myself that were undeveloped, that looking at my strengths and acknowledging those, giving myself credit for my accomplishments, for the things that I bring to the world. It has looked like getting involved in my community and developing meaningful relationships. It's looked like creating a career that is really deeply meaningful to me and to my values. So I think, for all of us, that is probably the way to healing. Not my path, but looking at creating meaningful lives for ourselves and looking at showing up in our lives in meaningful ways. So we can recognize these people-pleasing, perfectionism, how we're perceived. We can all recognize when those come up, and they can just be flags, and they can just be saying, pay attention to this. This is an area in which maybe there's a little room to love yourself some more here. So I'm curious to hear from you guys if you have experience in this area. What maybe are some places that you have looked outside of yourself for love, and what has it looked like to transform that and to come to a place where you have found love for yourself? So if you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe, share them with friends, give them a thumbs up. That helps other people find our community that we're creating here together. I'm really glad you guys joined me today. See you next time.